reviewing The Art of Weeing in a Sink by Richie Smith. So as I was saying, carrying on from what I was saying before, so the next thing that I thought was quite interesting is that on page 27, he talks about his emotions and how emotions are a challenge for him, as they are for me, and I think for many autistic people. For example, he gives an example, one of his dogs died and his mother was upset, and he did not feel upset. It wasn't because he didn't love his dog, he loved his dog loads, but he couldn't access that emotion of being upset. So he lay in bed, forcing himself to cry, desperate to feel how normal people felt, and he was unable to shed tears when something died that he knew he loved. And I can really relate to that because I really struggle with emotions. I don't really understand emotions at all. I have feelings, but just like anyone else, but I don't really understand them, and they don't really register with me. I can't make sense of them. If my way of dealing with things is different to most people. So often then people will tell me I don't care, or because I'm not expressing feelings in the way you're supposed to. Because say someone might die, for example, and it's not because I don't care or anything like that, but literally I can't really show emotion in the way people expect, or I will cry privately because I hate crying in front of people, and I hardly ever cry in front of people. I don't know why, I just find it kind of makes me feel vulnerable crying in front of other people, and I just can't do it. But because I don't cry in front of other people, people think I don't care, and then I might just say cry once or twice or whatever on my own, and then that's it, it's out of my system now, and I can't force myself to cry like that. So I can relate to that, and I don't really understand emotions or anything like that. I just don't really get them, so I definitely can relate to that. He also says how he hated being touched, and yet he dreamed about cuddles. So he hated being touched. I can relate to that as well because, I'm not particularly tactile, but at the same time, I do sometimes want to be cuddled, if that makes sense. So it's kind of weird because I don't really... with some people, it has to be on my terms, and I like proper strong hugging, where you hug someone, really, there are hugs and hugs, but I don't like being just randomly touched or and it has to be when I feel like it. But I can relate to that. And what's the next bit? So he talks about his academic record. On page 42, he talks about how he failed all of his GCSEs, which is different to me. He says because he never revised, which is different to me because I did revise a lot. I actually took revision really very seriously, mainly because my mum kind of put in place a structure, and I wanted to do it exactly right. And I think for me, because I am very, very routine based, and as long as someone's put a routine into place, it has to be there. Someone has to have created that routine for me. But if that routine and structure has been put in place for me, I will then kind of follow it to the letter. So I ended up revising a lot, following my mum's schedule and structure. And I did actually get some good GCSEs. No one was expecting that. So I actually did the complete opposite of what people was expecting, and did a lot better than everyone expected, but only because I got all of that intensive help. I don't think, if my parents didn't help me in the way they did, there's no way I would have got those GCSEs. I was just fortunate that I had parents who spent so much time helping me write essays and do my homework and stuff, because left to my own devices, and without that support, there's just no way. But so that was a different experience there. He left school because he didn't get his GCSE, so he got a job cleaning tables at a local restaurant. And he says though he was good at chatting up girls, which is different to me because I've literally no idea how to chat up people. But he said he had that skill. So he managed to get his first girlfriend at a restaurant, who happened to be a customer. He asked for her number there. And he then progressed to assistant manager. He broke up with his girlfriend, and he got a flat above the shop, opposite above a shop opposite a restaurant where he worked. So the staff used his flat as a party venue. They would drink, have hangovers, and stuff like that. It seems like quite a sort of like chaotic existence. And he gambled his rent money in casinos, and then he was kicked out for not paying rent. And then he got a new flat with friends from work. So he had a very sort of chaotic, risky existence, totally unlike my own. I mean, I hate the sound of that. Sounds horrible. I mean, I wouldn't survive in an environment like that. I hate parties. I don't drink. I'm teetotal. I've never had a hangover. I've never got drunk. I just can't stand the taste of alcohol, full stop. And I'm not the sort of type of person who would gamble because I'm incredibly tight-fisted. I'm not impulsive in that way. So that's completely different. It's so interesting, like how although we both share the same diagnosis and there are similarities, there's also so many differences, which is interesting, I think. So he got a transfer to another restaurant, and that's where he met his current partner. Who again was a customer because he made it his mission to get her number. He was hell-bent on getting her number, and he kept pestering her for a date as he was determined to have her, and that was back in 2007. And again, he said he had a lot of parties, completely different to me because I hate parties, but he seems to not mind them, which just shows how different autistic people can be from one another. And then he'd been going out with his new partner for a year and a half when he asked her to marry him. And they're still currently engaged. And then he got a new job at Curry's as a salesman. He says he's got the gift of the gab, which again is completely different to me because I don't have the gift of the gab. But yeah, and salesmanship, not for me. And he talks about how he got depressed and he actually took an overdose and he was rushed to hospital. And then he had therapy. And it talks about self-harming and things like that, and gambling money, so losing money and overdosing. So again, it's completely different to my own existence. My own existence is very ordered and controlled, very methodical. I'm not a risk taker at all. Like I say, I've never gambled. I've never done any of those things. So he seems quite extroverted, I guess, compared to me. I'm like very introverted, and I'm not a risk taker. I'm very risk adverse, in fact. So again, different personalities there. Just try and find the next bit. Where are we? So good. Sorry, I've got my notes are a bit all over the place. So then it goes on to say that he was working part-time at Phones Are For You, and then he decided to get into engineering because he's good at detail, and his only GCSE was in maths. So again, different to me, maths is my weakness, and I want GCSE. I haven't, other than art, but that was because I didn't understand the coursework, but I failed both art and maths GCSE. So different to me, but he said he's obviously good at maths, and he's always been good at putting things together, so he loves Lego and things like that, and he describes himself as a risk taker, as I say, so these are all aspects of him that are different to me. And he gained a foundation degree in mechanical and manufacturing engineering, and then he talks about how he went on to adopt 2 children with his partner. And he also talks a little bit about masking as well, presentation Richard, which is his alter ego. So one of his main coping strategies is to create another me. And he talks about how his life is a presentation of a more social. He talks about how he's created his presentation Richard to create a more socially acceptable version of himself. A bit like as if he had to go to college and give a presentation, but like doing it all the time. And he thinks that's part of the reason why he got diagnosed so late, because of his masking. And then page 98 to 99, he talked about how he finally got diagnosed after he'd adopted his kids and his life was back on track, and he now had a house, a job, a relationship, and he went to his doctor to discuss some issues, particularly around noise that he was having because of the babies crying, and the doctor then suggested autism and referred him to a psychologist who likewise suggested autism once they had heard his issues. And it was just because luck would have it, she had recently learnt more about autism. So it often does come down to luck, you know. But then, of course, there's a 15-month waiting list before he was finally got his assessment. And he talks about how on page 101, he says, when someone is told that they're likely to be autistic, that's the time they need help and info the most. allowing someone to flounder around in a vacuum for 15 months is not good enough. And I would agree with that, because that's often a bit like when I was waiting for my diagnosis. I had to wait for about a year or so, just under a year, which isn't too bad when you consider this was back, for me, I was diagnosed back 2008, beginning of 2009. It was kind of like spread out because I had several appointments. But it wasn't too bad, less than a year at the time. But all the therapy I was having stopped, which, and I needed therapy at that time. Thankfully, I did have a support worker for the mental health team who I saw once a week, so it's better than nothing. But yeah, you are often left to flounder in that interval when you really often need support at that time. But yeah, he was diagnosed very recently. Rick, he was only diagnosed 2018, and I was diagnosed back in 2008, 2009. He says how he started to mask a lot less since his diagnosis, and he resigned from his job as a lecturer at Newcastle University, and he launched a freelance business installing TVs. Again, he launched his own company, Autistic, to raise awareness of autism, and that was launched in 2018. So his story is almost a rags to riches tale, really, of living a chaotic, depressed existence that is redeemed when he meets his partner, adopts 2 children, and starts a successful business. In conclusion, then, while I could relate to parts of his narrative, there was much in it that was very different to my own more sheltered, stable life as an autistic. So all this stuff about parties, hangovers, gambling and stuff like that, completely different to my own existence, so I couldn't relate to them at all. And obviously the fact, he does now have 2 kids, and he's got a partner, and he's set up this business, and all of those